Welcome to Marketing Demystified, the podcast that connects the dots for business leaders to drive revenue through effective marketing strategy. We chat with marketing experts on different topics that will help you ramp up your revenue. We stream live on LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast platforms. Marketing Demystified, the podcast, is presented to you by GrowGetter, your partner in growth marketing. And here's today's episode.
Hello, everyone. Are you ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered to transform your marketing game? You're in the right place. Welcome to Marketing Demystified. I'm your host, Jenn Mancusi, CEO and co-founder of GrowGetter, your growth marketing partner. Marketing can feel like a tug-of-war between data and creativity. While we have more customer data than ever before, many marketers struggle to turn those numbers into meaningful human connections. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into today with Zontee Hou, author of Data-Driven Personalization and managing director at Convince and Convert. Zontee has spent over a decade helping major brands and Fortune 1000 companies transform their marketing strategies through smart, personalized approaches. Welcome to the show, Zontee.
Thanks for having me, Jen. Really happy to be here.
Really excited to get into this topic today and to have you come and chat with us about this topic. This has been so forefront recently, especially a lot of conversation going around about bad personalization or lack of personalization, especially just on the internet. And so, yeah, I'm excited to dive in today and maybe give some people some tips on how to fix the mistakes that they're making today.
Yeah, well, you are definitely speaking my language, so I look forward to getting into it.
Amazing. So you talk about being hyper relevant to customers. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and maybe where teams are falling short?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was writing my book, one of the things that we did was actually custom research to understand what are the actual expectations of your consumers, right? So we went out to US adults. We asked them, do you expect companies to personalize your experience based on the shared history that you have with that company? And more than 80% said yes. That's the expectation that they have, that they believe that companies past interactions that they've had, whether that is through making purchases, browsing, looking at content, interacting with a brand in different platforms, and that they should be getting messaging, content, product selections, etc., based on those actual interactions, right? And I think that what hyper personalization is really about is a reflection of the reality that we live in, which is that most of our customers, and I know I certainly experienced this, have less bandwidth than ever before because there are so many different messages coming at them at any given time. When you think about social media, for instance, there are billions of YouTube videos streamed every minute of the day. There are hundreds of millions of searches performed every minute of the day. People are just constantly bombarded with information. So what personalization really is saying that there is an onus on the brands to actually do the work of sorting through all that noise for the customers so that they see something that is fit for their need set, for their specific situation, for that shared history between them and their brand. And by doing so, it makes the customer more likely to spend money with the brand because they feel like they are getting a lot of value very quickly. I mean, Jen, I would love for you to think a little bit about your own experience as a consumer. I bet you've seen an ad on a platform where you've said, I've literally just bought that product. I don't need to see that ad. That feels really frustrating, right?
Mm-hmm.
But on the flip side, when you see an ad for something that you go, ooh, that is a literal experience that I have had and a question that I have asked myself. This is a product that I should look at more closely, even though it's something that I've never really thought about before. That's where personalization is really winning.
Yeah, I think from a consumer perspective, I totally agree. I've had those experiences where, you say you get an ad or an email saying, you've still got a product in your cart. It's like, no, I bought that. I just bought it in a different browser, or, it redirected me somewhere. But when you do have that experience of like, oh, you just bought this other thing might also be of interest to you. Or maybe it's giving me information about how to use the thing I just bought, or something educational. Like, it does feel more relevant. I think there was a time in the earlier days of sort of retargeting and tracking this data where it would turn people off, right? People
Sure.
were horrified by, how do you have all my data? It's not
Sure.
like that anymore. So it's
Yeah.
more important for people to do it properly
Yeah.
than sort of act as though we're not tracking each other's data. We're all accepting, we're
Yeah.
consenting to online in a different way today. And I think it's more expected. Um, and so I think that we need to be doing it in a more personalized way.
Yeah, you bring up some really good points. I mean, we actually asked that specific question of those same adults, and we
Interesting.
said, are you more interested in relevancy and convenience, or are you more interested in privacy? And what we actually found was that a plurality of people were more interested in the convenience factor. About 25% were looking for kind of a balance of personalization and privacy, and then about 31% were looking to have more privacy. But what we realized was that really indicates that pendulum has swung where people realize that there's value in their data being used in ways that's highly relevant to them and that does save them time. The other thing that I share in the book is that there are a lot of examples of brands where, of course, like you said, there was that uncanny valley where I think we've all had that experience where you go and you browse a website of maybe a service company or something, and suddenly you get a phone call and they're like, "Hi, you've been looking at our website," and you're like, "Yeesh!" Like that's a little bit desperate, right? It feels like too much. But now I think most companies recognize that there is a desirable zone, which is to say that they want to provide you value, they want to give you those resources, they want to help you use the product, they want to help you think through your purchase, but they don't necessarily want to pressure you into purchasing before you're ready, right? Most companies, I think, understand that there need to be a certain number of touch points before you're ready to go. So I think that there is that exercise for companies to really think strategically about how do you get the most out of your data so that you are showing up in the relevant places for your audience at the right times and frequently enough so that you are adding value to their purchase process. And then making sure to balance that against being overwhelming or to be in spaces that they don't want you to see, right? Data is in a lot of ways just information that you have about your customers that is organized in such a way that your team can tap into it, not only now but in the future, right? I work with companies, some that are, you know, many billions of dollars, and they will tell me that they don't actually have their customer data in a format that their marketers can actually draw out exactly what these people have done previously or what those interactions are, and therefore they can't really easily target and market to them in a more personalized way. And that always surprises me because it's not that the data doesn't exist, right? Oftentimes within organizations, the issue is putting it in the right format and in the right hands so that marketing people and the marketing organization can actually do something about it.
Mm, that's such an important point. And I have a couple of follow up questions for you. And I want to talk a little bit about the customer journey. But what you just said about sort of marketers even having access to the right kind of data to
Sure.
create that personalization. Like,
Yeah.
if you're on the marketing side and you don't have that access, what can you do?
Yeah, this is one of the main arguments that I try to make in my book, which is that marketers need to advocate to have a seat at the table, if not ownership or leadership within the working group that is organizing customer data. Why? Because we're the people who are really going to make use of that data to get more value out of our customer relationships or to attract new customers into our fold, right? In order to do that, we need to know some really specific information about what it is that they do, they don't do, they like, they don't like, they prefer, etc. Right? Um, Most organizations will find that nobody has real ownership for the usage of the data. You'll have IT or technology kind of owning the storage of the data. You might have sales involved in the input of the data, but you won't necessarily have all of the different individuals who are actually utilizing that data for marketing purposes or for that sales and customer journey purpose in the room together to really decide what it is that they want to do with that data. I think that it's incumbent on marketing leaders to say, hey, this is something that is really important to us as an organization. We need to get a working group together. We need to figure out who needs to be involved in the decision making, and we need to create a structure for what data we need to collect that is usable and valuable for us as marketers, as well as making sure that we're putting in processes along that customer journey so that whether it's our salespeople or our customer service people or just the marketing intake processes where people are setting up accounts or requesting information from you, that all of those things are organized so that they produce the right information that's actually useful for your team. That's really about data hygiene. It's about data governance. It's about really good training. There's a lot of different aspects of that. But to get good data, you need to build an infrastructure within your team where you are collecting good data. I like to go to the old adage, right? The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best is today. And I think that with data, it's a very similar process. If you haven't been collecting data all along, you need to start today.
I love that. I think you're 100% right. The right time would have been before, but second best, let's get started today. I love that. And I want to go back a bit to something you were talking about earlier about, like how important is the customer journey in thinking about the different types of personalization that you want to employ? Because to your point before, if I'm just browsing, I don't want a phone call from a company that I'm just doing some very early stage research on. But I
Yeah.
have different expectations for a company where I'm a member or I'm a regular
Yeah.
customer. I'm a Prime member. I order from Amazon all the time. I have different expectations for the type of personalization that I get from Amazon than when I'm just browsing. Like, how do you think about that?
Yeah.
And segmenting that data and then making decisions about the types of personalization that are relevant in those different
Yeah.
moments.
Well, Jen, you are hitting the nail on the head. You are interpreting right away this idea that at different stages of the customer journey, different ideas for personalization are necessary, right? Very early in the customer journey, we're not necessarily looking to even identify the people so much as give them choices that allow them to choose their own adventure, the pathway that is most valuable to them. In that stage, what I think a lot of organizations get wrong is they think, well, we don't know anything about them, so we'll just show them our best of
Mm,
content, tools, processes, products, whatever. Um, Instead, I would rather you say upfront, hey, these are three common scenarios that we see a lot. Which one fits you? Start by giving them the choice. In the book, one of the small business examples that I share is a company called Methodical Coffee. Methodical Coffee is out of South Carolina, and they are a direct to consumer coffee brand as well as a chain of cafes. What they put in front of their coffee purchasers online is three categories for, are you somebody who's really a coffee connoisseur? Are you really casual? Are you somebody who is here to learn? What stage of the coffee journey are you in? And by giving them that choice up front, they're right away able to start offering them content and recommendations that are more specific to that person's need choices. Now, you may say to me, well, that's just a form of segmentation. But listen, segmentation is the first step of personalization. We've got to start somewhere in collecting the data. So give them the ability to make those choices up front, and then you can start to customize based on the input that they gave you back and forth. I'll give you an example from an entirely different space. I'm a judge for the Content Marketing Awards, and one of the categories that I judged this year was in the healthcare space. And we saw an entry from GSK where it is a resource for caregivers. It's called Carerhood. And one of the things that they do on their website experience when you land on this essentially blog and resource and content hub is again kind of asking you, what are the situations that you face on a day to day level? In other words, what do you want to learn about, what would be most useful to you. That first step allows them to, again, start the process of collecting information about somebody that they can use to personalize the experience the next time around through cookies, etc. But it also starts to build the trust between them and the person who's visiting the site by giving them that opportunity to give feedback, right? What is it that actually matters and would make the most use of their time here? Now, when you get further down that customer journey, Jen, you mentioned, when you are a Prime member, you're somebody who's a repeat customer, et cetera. At that point, they should be really looking at all of those different inputs of how you shop, what matters, and even what time of day matters to you, so that they can give you more relevant examples of things that might help you from a day-to-day perspective. Amazon Prime, one of the things that they do, right, is help you to identify things that you purchase frequently so that they can turn that into a subscription and even suggest to you, based on your purchase data, how often you might be wanting to buy that item. Or think about a site like Netflix, right? Netflix will actually show you different content depending on the time of day that you are logging in, because they recognize that your morning behavior for watching something while you get dressed and get ready for your day is going to be really different from what you're watching when you are unwinding at the end of the day. And so they're going to show you different content based on that. A good business example of that is from a B2C brand that I feature in the book called Fresh Direct. So Fresh Direct is a direct-to-consumer supermarket. I don't know if you've used them before, but they are in Connecticut. And
Yeah.
one of the things that they do is they've got a really well-rounded 360-degree data collection system on their app, on their website, through SMS, through third-party data that they're integrating. And so they can make recommendations to you based on what you and your family purchase on a regular basis, the brands that you buy, the different mediums through which you order, right? Again, how we order on our mobile device for, a last minute order might be really different from how we order on the desktop for our regular, weekly grocery shopping. And they are, again, making it easier for you to make purchases by, of course, saying, here are your regular things that you seem to order a lot. Do you want those? Save you a couple minutes just by clicking yes. I just want the 10 things I always buy. But also saying to you, and here are the things that are on sale from the brands that you really like that we think might be something that's worth you trying, right? Because if you try something and you're happy, you become a repeat customer of that product too, and they want that, right? So again, it's all about really thinking through where you are in your customer journey, what information will help you, and what will help you with that relationship between you and the brand. Right? At the beginning of the journey, we're really thinking about building trust, just building interest and seeing more customization from the brand. And then when you're really a repeat customer where they're trying to lengthen the lifetime of your relationship with the brand as well as increase the size of your basket, then they're really giving you recommendations of, here's that one thing that's an additional thing that might be really helpful to you.
Yeah. I, all of this sounds amazing. And if I'm somebody out there who's like, oh, I'm going to do the next best thing and start collecting this data today, it feels overwhelming, right? There's so many segments and possibilities and types, data points. And as you're talking through those examples, the Fresh Direct example is a great one. The Amazon examples are great ones. Like that, those are very well built out and established programs that have probably been around for a little while.
Sure.
What would you say to somebody who is kind of just getting started in terms of like where to start with creating this personalized content
Sure.
for these different segments in a way that's not overwhelming?
Sure. Well, that's why I really like that example from Methodical Coffee, right? Again, they are a small business and they've really identified that in their marketing funnel at the very front, just asking people for their preference, saving that information so they can associate that with the individual account, and then using that for things like email personalization and for retargeting. That is a really easy pathway to starting to do that customization. Another small business example that I share in the book is a company called Farmhouse Tack. They are a horseback riding company, again, small business. And one of the things that they do is, again, just ask people up front, why are they shopping for horseback riding equipment, right? Because somebody who is a hobby horseback rider for themselves as an adult is really different from a family where their child is taking horseback riding lessons for the first time, right? They collect that information up front. You fill out a form. You essentially are setting up a little bit of information that they're collecting in their system. And that's a good place to get started. They also are building content for each of those different audiences. So, where you should probably start is one, know which target audience segments are your most valuable. That's a great place to start building out more content so that you can ask questions around that personalization. Two, make sure you have a system that can help you to collect the data so that you can make sure that you can keep track of this information. Like I said, it's great to have a whole lot of knowledge about your customers, but it's not data until you actually put it into a system that you can tap into and extract from later on, and not just you, the individual who's, say, the owner or operator of the company, but your team, the other people that you work with, right? And then three, it's really identifying those places where you can start to ask your customers for their information that is valuable to them, right? What are the points at which they want information customized or personalized to them? And what are the kinds of key questions that they will want to answer that help them extract a value from their interaction with you? And to make sure you're collecting that data back. It doesn't have to be complicated. It does need to be systematic and a
Mhm.
process and a strategic approach. And that's really what I spell out in the book. So what we're talking about here, it's literally the first couple of chapters of the book. We really just talk about it step by step. But I think these are exactly the kinds of questions that people need to be asking themselves. How do you build a system around this thing? It's not just hopes and wishes for good data, right? We actually have to put in the infrastructure to collect it systematically.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned this earlier that, personalization is a form of segmentation. Like, I would even argue maybe it's the form of segmentation because people don't behave the same way just because they fit in a particular demographic bucket,
Sure,
or if you're B2B, the firmographics of different companies, like
sure.
those ideal customer profiles, the personas with this is, Mary, this is how old she is and what degree she has, like that person doesn't always care about the same things, probably rarely cares about the same things that somebody else that fits those data points do. And maybe that was the only way we could track people a number of years
Sure.
ago. And so that was segmentation. But now it's, that what you described of like identify those opportunities to ask questions about people's preferences and
Yeah.
about what the kind of content would be useful or helpful to them is such a simple concept that could actually be a really powerful way to create those segmentation buckets and market to them in a personalized way.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think you're absolutely right that it used to be that maybe we really thought about segmentation because that was as far as we could scale to. But now, with many technical tools that are available to us, right, most of our ESPs allow the suggesting of products based on what is in your data bank and what products people have purchased before, what kinds of content that they've browsed before. Again, most websites, you can add a very simple widget that's extremely inexpensive that basically makes suggestions to people about what content they should look at next based on what they've read recently. Same with retargeting, right? We are actually showing to people specific advertisements based on what they've looked at on our website, in our content of our products, etc. So there are a lot of opportunities to use technology to get to this one-to-one marketing. Now, the thing that I think is important for us to keep in mind is the goal is not to have an individual marketing approach for every single one of these customers that you, the company, is putting into place, right? You can't run a million different marketing strategies. You should
Mhm.
have a marketing strategy that focuses on your most valuable customers, right? Whether that's one or two or three segments, but then identify those places within your marketing stack where you can use technology to really get to that more personalized approach for those high value customers. Or if you are a very small company and you say to me, okay, I want to do this, but we don't have even 100,000 customers that we want to target. We have 50 or 100 customers that we want to target. Then there's an opportunity here to use that data to take an account based marketing, an ABM approach, where you are arming your salespeople with this information so that they can go and have a one-to-one connection or interaction with each of these customers where they are actually offering that highly tailored approach, right? So this is a scalable approach. It works for companies that are very small. It works for companies that are large. It works for companies that are growing. It just depends on what size you are. You're going to take a slightly different a tactical approach in terms of the execution of who does the outreach and how tailored that message is. But really, if you have 50 or 100 accounts that you're like, I want to go after, my suggestion for you with an ABM approach is that again, you're really tracking what these people consume content wise, and then you're really going after them saying like, here's something that we think would be of high value to you. We've curated, a quarterly email where we've chosen five resources that we think are really high value to you and your team based on who you are and where you are in your life cycle with us. And again, that takes a little bit more work, but if you have the data tracked in your system, then your team can really share the information and be able to actually start to pair your customer with the content or the resources you want to send to them, and really make that just a regular part of your ongoing process.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a huge fan of an account-based approach. I highly recommend it for a lot of my clients and just people in the market. But I think sometimes people really struggle with narrowing down their most valuable segment or their most valuable target accounts because there is sort of a sense of, well, I don't want to exclude anybody from our marketing strategy. But in fact, that prioritization can be so valuable from an outcome perspective because we said it right from the beginning, the concept of being hyper relevant. You can't be hyper relevant to every individual person that could potentially buy from you. Um,
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a tiered approach, right? So it's not to say you're going to exclude all of those people. You're just going to put more emphasis and more touch points on the people who are high value, the accounts that are high value, the prospects that are high value, and then say we are still creating surround sound marketing that is available to people who want to self-identify. And when they say, "Hey, we're ready to get more information from the brand," then we're going to be there to again offer them more hyper relevant, hyper targeted resources that then help to move them through that relationship with us. So I think for organizations, this is really about recognizing that even the largest organization, and again, I work with some organizations, in the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, where these are billion-dollar companies, and they still have limited resources when it comes to marketing, sales, content creation, etc. You cannot boil the ocean. We have to decide what are the places that we actually want to spend some time and where we think we're going to have the best results, and then we can grow from there.
Yeah. And again, another shout out for having the data and a system in place is that you can actually see where your efforts are providing results. So you might think that a certain segment is the highest value, maybe you find that another one in another area organically is growing in a different way, and you can reinvest your time and your resources and your budget into that area if you're tracking that data properly, which is so important. Now, you've mentioned a couple of times throughout, sort of in passing, a few different channels in which you can kind of deliver this personalized content. Can we talk specifically about those and what makes the most sense? What works best for delivering some of this personalized content, maybe
Sure.
depending on where people are in the journey?
Yeah, well, it definitely depends on where people are in the journey. It also really depends on your industry and what customers want out of their relationship for you, right? So, of course, there are opportunities in social media, especially paid social media, right, where we can do a lot of hyper targeting within the advertising that people are seeing. We can do great retargeting. Email is another channel that, of course, is of high value. Website, again, tons of personalization is now available within websites, and you can use lots of different technology stacks that sit on top of your website to offer some of that personalization. It can get as specific as the name of the person or the account that they belong to, but I think more importantly, it can really speak to some of those industry needs and those specific challenges that they face. And there are some AI tools that even allow you to do it based on their psychographics. In other words, the attitudes or belief systems that they're coming into the website with, so they can actually change your headlines and the copy that they're actually seeing to be more relevant to their specific need set. So there's some great opportunities there. But I want to share an example from the physical world, which is the beauty brand Sephora. Sephora noticed probably 15 plus years ago that people would come into their stores, the physical stores, and they'd either pull out their smartphone or they'd pull out a little notebook and they would look for the specific color or product name or product line that they were looking for. Because from any individual beauty brand, there might be 3, 4, 10 different lines of products that kind of look similar. And within any of those product lines, they have lots of different colors or shades or whatever. And so people would have come in with their notes and they would want to make sure that they're purchasing the right product they're specifically looking for. And this was something that the Sephora team really watched people do. And they realized that there was an opportunity to build it into their experience for the brand. In other words, they created an app that allowed people to make their online shopping at Sephora, their in-shop experience with Sephora, and the device connected by keeping track of those purchases and wish lists and saved items and information all in one place so that you could make sure that you always got the right product, right? So in their particular case, they recognized that later in the journey there was this need for highly specific personalized information in the hand of people, and so they built an app. So what that delivery mechanism needs to be for your audience will depend on where they tend to make their decisions, how they're doing their research process, who is involved in that purchase process, what are the channels where they're spending time, all of the things that you would normally take into consideration when it comes to your marketing strategy, all the things that you should know from that customer journey perspective. Your personalization strategy won't be different in terms of where those channels are. It will be specific in terms of what information do we need to deliver at that point in the customer journey. Again, we talked about earlier this idea that somebody might come to your website as they're doing some general research. You want to ask them on your website, what challenge are you trying to solve for here, right? And then as they go down the funnel and now they're looking at comparisons, maybe you're saying, of these different attributes that we have that our competitors have, what matters most to you? And then you're offering them more specific content based on that decision making, right? We're kind of moving them through the not only decision making process, but just the thinking process around our product or service. How can we offer them more specific information to help them based on how they think, what matters to them? And you may find that some people, they're, as we all know, more price sensitive, or they're more value sensitive, or they're more prestige sensitive. How can we deliver to them something that tells the story that matters to them?
Yeah. I think what I love about what you're saying is that this is fully rooted in understanding people, right? You have to do the research, whether that is, it doesn't mean necessarily a survey, though that might be part of it. It could be interviews, it could be asking people these one off questions at different moments when they're interacting with you. But just that mindset of, I want to understand what's going to be most helpful and sort of letting go. I think sometimes we can get, when we're so close to our own products and our own businesses, and we think, I know what our customer wants and needs. I know it better than they do. And maybe they're, not to discount the knowledge that we gain over time and the experience, but that mindset shift of, I don't know what they want. Let me ask them what they want or what would be helpful or what they need. That sort of brings them along the creation journey, and actually you'll have a better chance of delivering them what they want if you ask them instead of making an assumption.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. I mean, there's the famous example, right, of Steve Jobs talking about how if you asked the consumer, would they buy something that combined their MP3 player and their phone and their like computer, they would say, "Why would I need that thing?" But they introduced something special. I think there's still a validity in saying I have a product or service that I think is solving for a problem that people don't even recognize that they have.
Mhm.
But they do recognize that they have the problem, and they recognize that there are certain decisions around that problem that they face. So I think the important thing from a marketing perspective for personalization is our opportunity is to listen to the customer about what matters to them and why it is that they do what they do. We might have the solution when it comes to the product or service, but we need to ask them why they make the decisions around it. Because somebody who's making decisions to, let's say, save time, because they're a busy mom. So I'm a mom, and one of the things that I pay for a service to do is I order meal prepared meals in trays, and I get them from Blue Apron, I get them from Cook Unity, different companies, right?
Mhm.
The problem that I'm solving for is that I have very limited time because I'm a working professional. I want to eat healthy, I want to eat fresh, and I love to cook, but I just don't have the time to manage all of the cooking in my week. And this is one way that I save time. That is why I make that decision. That decision is very different from somebody who's saying, I just don't want to have to think about cooking. I just want food to show up at my door because like having to think about food is a drain from a mind perspective. And that's something that I hear from, a lot of young people in their 20s. They're like, I just don't want to have to worry about food, right? Which is very different from somebody who's ordering something like a Blue Apron for inspiring themselves to get out of their culinary box, and they want to learn to cook new things, right? By getting recipes that they would never think to make themselves. I consider myself a very good cook and an adventurous cook. I don't need somebody to teach me to cook. I need somebody to save me time. The
Mhm.
product service set is the same in terms of who's providing it, right? But why I'm coming to the table is really different. So for a brand, it's important to recognize, why does your customer need the solution? What is it that you can offer them that will resonate with the way they make that decision? And what information will convince them to give you a shot?
Yeah. And I think your point about, different people solving different problems with the same product, it's important to understand that there's not necessarily, a single problem that you're solving. But if you understand who your most valuable customers are, like you mentioned earlier, you can focus on communicating that solution to that problem that fits within that personalization segment, rather than communicating all the problems that you're solving, which may not be possible from a marketing perspective. I think on the B2B side, Gong has historically done a really great job at this. Like a lot of their what did you call it, surround sound marketing
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
really focused on sales leaders. Now there are applications for that technology that are so relevant for marketing teams, so relevant for customer success teams. I've used it myself as a marketer and as a sales leader, and for very different reasons. And but they know who their most valuable customer is, and it's their
Exactly.
messaging is personalized to that. It doesn't prevent anybody else from buying from them.
That's
It
right.
just presents it a little bit differently, which it's a great approach. And I want to talk actually a little bit about testing the content that you're putting out to these different segments. How should marketers go about testing their content, and what do you recommend they're looking for in these tests that they're doing?
Yeah, I am just a huge proponent of testing. My suggestion is always to go out to the field with a hypothesis in mind, right? Have created this ebook based on this hypothesis, and therefore we're going to see, does that bear out? And if not, what can we learn from that? What did it bear out? What were the results of that? Every piece of content that you are putting out there should have a hypothesis around it based on um, what you know about your audience, what you've seen work in the past, what you think will optimize it for the future. And how you should market that, of course, will depend. So, like many of my answers, I think that it always really depends on your specific company and the specific challenges that you are looking to solve for. There's a certain amount that we can measure from direct behavior, right? Downloads, opens, time on site, time on page, scroll depth, heat maps, things like that, that we can see. Of course, that is very valuable. I don't discount that. there are a lot of things that I hear from marketing teams and marketing leaders that are difficult to measure because they are indirect, right? In other words, what is the impact on brand affinity, on consideration, on trust? How does this impact our actual purchase process, etc.? Some of those things can be hard to measure because we don't own all of those numbers. Now, some of that you can do from surveys, and I do really recommend that more marketing teams are doing benchmark surveys on an annual and or biannual basis so that you are getting some of these sentiment numbers, and you can show that by taking this more personalized approach, we are improving the sentiment and preference of our customers. But also, we need to connect the dots in terms of not just causation, right, but the correlation piece. So again, we can't get at it directly, but demonstrating that the people in our system, and again, if you have a good CRM that is connected to your marketing content and to the data collection about your customer behaviors, you should be able to see this. Are our best customers consuming more content, clicking on more marketing messaging, responding to more emails, opening more content than our worst performing clients? That's one question. Another question is, of our best customers, do we see that their life cycle is longer when they are interacting with the content, right? Because again, content marketing, marketing suggestions in terms of products, service suggestions, how do you get the most out of our product or service, all of that stuff is really about increasing your customers' length of their life cycle. How long do they actually stay a customer with you? And therefore, how do they impact you? And the other piece of this that I always tell teams that they really need to be looking at is the referral piece. If you have great customers who love you, they are likely spreading the word. If you are not tracking how your customers are referring business to you, then that is a miss. And in fact, I have a whole chapter in my book about how you can then take your best referral customers, the ones who refer the most, and activate them further and formalize that process. Because the goals here are to grow your business in a sustainable way. And what is more sustainable than great word of mouth, right? Because those are the people who come in the door warm, who really have a lot of trust in you because somebody else has referred them. And so those are the different things that we need to be able to measure and connect back to our different customer segments and have some, again, hypotheses and tests around so that we can identify what really works for us.
Yeah, I think that's such an interesting point, because I hear the comment a lot that, maybe like marketing doesn't really work, or our content's not really work. Our most successful is really word of mouth. There's like this almost sense that word of mouth is not connected to marketing, but the customer service that you provide in and of itself. Excuse me, Henrik is very excited today about word of mouth. There's word of mouth from my dog today on the episode.
Love it.
But there is this sense of like, well, referrals and word of mouth don't have anything to do with marketing. But there is a lot you can do to incentivize or encourage, or really harness that when you see that that is a really strong performing channel for you. Again, if you're tracking it properly, and really kind of lead into that and measure that, and try to activate it a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. I think it is so important to just identify the places where you can activate your customers to tell your stories. Now, of course, you can go to your customers and say, hey, would you take a customer survey? But I had a small business client some years ago where we would do their annual survey. And at the end of it, the final call to action was, if you gave us a great review in our annual survey and you'd like to go to Amazon, excuse me, not Amazon, Google reviews and share your opinion publicly, it makes a real difference. Some of the things that really help us are, people talking about X, Y, and Z, and it kind of listed some suggestions of things to specifically talk about. And by just adding that question, and this was a company with extremely high favorability among its customers in its annual review, it activated people each year to add to the existing Google ratings. That really helped them gain more visibility in their marketplace because people were looking for highly trustworthy companies to work with locally. And so, just by putting that as part of their activation, that was very simple, and it really encouraged people to share word of mouth indirectly, right? So the kind of third party reviews. You can also do some specific campaigns around asking people for referrals, going out to market and saying, hey, it's the end of the year. If you have had a great experience with us, one thing that you can do for us that would really help is tell us who we should be connecting with in your network that you think would benefit from the products or services that we offer. And we'd love to offer them something special and reach out to them, with your thanks. And I think that, the more we can identify opportunities for our customers to pay it forward, the more likely it is that people will do this. I mentioned some food meal kit type companies before, and that's something that many of them offer, right? Is if you refer a friend, we'll gift them a box on your behalf. They get a meal box from you. And if they decide to become a subscriber, we'd love to offer you a free meal box as a gift and thank you for making that referral, right? There's lots of referral programs like this. But what I think that's really about is this idea of, again, like the pay it forward. How do you help your customers feel good about the action that they've actually taken?
Yeah, totally. And make it easy for them. Make them not have to think about what to do. I love that
Totally.
description. Like, here are some things that are helpful to us. Like, tell people they probably want to be helpful if you've provided value to them. But there's a hesitation to ask, or maybe it's just a footnote with a link to review. But
Sure.
actually, creating some strategy around that could really be impactful. I love
That's
that.
right.
Well, I can't thank you enough for this conversation. I love personalization. I think it's so important right now. As we were talking about in the beginning, I just have seen such poorly executed, cold outreach LinkedIn messages with, we think we can really help company name, in there, or things like that, just are not hitting the mark. And I think, you gave some really great actionable tips for how people can get started on a smaller scale and how they can scale as they grow. So thank you so much for joining. Can you tell the audience how they can get a hold of your book?
Yeah, absolutely. So data-driven personalization is available everywhere that books are sold. If you want to go to bookshop.org, you can buy it in your local indie bookshop. You can go to Amazon. You can go to Barnes& and Noble. You can go to Indigo. Whatever bookshop experience you prefer, you can go there. It's also available directly from Kogan Page, the publisher. So koganpage.com/data-driven personalization. You can get your copy there, and it's available with free shipping to the US and to the UK.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much. Thanks for the conversation today.
Thanks for having me, Jen. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll be back with another episode soon. We'll see you then.